All ready? Should we go ahead and get started?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Engage Your Audience Virtually. My name is June Carlson, and I am joined by Cherish De La Cruz, who is my co-host, and we have our wonderful speaker today, David Dorriere. Cherish, do you want to introduce yourself real quickly, and then I'll do a little introduction, and then we can throw it to the most important person in the Zoom room today, which is David?
Yes, yes. My name is, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. I'm happy to have everybody on. My name is Cherish De La Cruz. I am an estate planning and business succession planning attorney here in Buckhead. I've lived in Gwinnett for a while, but my primary office is in Buckhead. I saw David speak at an event, at Donna's event a couple of months ago, and I was thrilled when he said that he would do this presentation with us. I learned a lot from that day, and that was pre-COVID. And so I know the importance of what virtual speaking is going to have in the next year for small businesses and for everybody pretty much. And so I know that today I'm delighted to have you here, and that I know that you will give us some practical tips that we can take away from this presentation. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Go ahead.
I am June Carlson with Southern First Bank. You can imagine that bankers didn't traditionally do this kind of stuff. It's been a very interesting COVID environment, but I've certainly learned a lot, and I really appreciate being able to do this. I want to introduce David. I too was lucky enough to attend one of David's seminars, and it was fabulous. David Dorriere helps trainers, business owners, and other presenters engage from any stage. And he delivers clear, impactful, and memorable presentations that he guarantees will motivate any audience to listen, act, and commit to their product, process, and ideal. Present Your Way to Success provides individual coaching and team training to business owners, CEOs, sales professionals, and organizations that are looking to increase the engagement between the presenter, the audience, and the material. David is a certified virtual facilitator and presenter, train the trainer expert, seasoned instructional designer, retired United States Air Force logistics NCO, and a professional Santa Claus. So please help me welcome David.
Yes, thank you, June. Thank you, Cherish, for this opportunity to be a part of your group. Who better to get presentation skills from than Santa himself? I've been trained by the real one. So thank you so much. What we're going to talk about today is engaging your audience virtually. I'm going to let you in on the first secret. All of the techniques that you've used on the stage in front of a live audience, all of those principles, all of the tricks that you've used in the past in front of that live audience to engage them, you can use those same principles virtually. However, you've got to kick everything up a notch or two, and you also have to incorporate some additional techniques, some additional tricks as well, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What I want to do is I want to acknowledge something that I've been hearing a lot lately, and possibly you have as well, Zoom fatigue. And I would agree with that. One meeting right after the other, one Zoom call right after the other. And they seem to kind of just drag into each other. Can't even remember when you had the meeting with so-and-so, on what day that it was. I would agree with that. However, I believe that every presenter through Zoom, if they use some of the techniques that I'm going to demonstrate today on engaging your audience, if you use just some of these, it's going to help engage your audience and help to reduce or even eliminate that Zoom fatigue. So let's go ahead and get started with things, and we're going to set the stage. Set the stage. What can you expect today? The first thing is that if you have not done so already, put the view on speaker view. Up in the top right-hand corner of the Zoom window, you'll see a little button. If it has if it looks like a waffle, go ahead and click on it, so you'll see me nice and large on the screen, because you'll see a number of these slides. So you don't have to squint. So first we're going to set the stage. Also, if you have not done so, please, I think everybody's microphone is off already anyway. If you happen to see things flying around on the screen, don't get upset, don't get panicky. That's just my hands. I'm from New York, so I have to use my hands. If you tie them behind my back, I can't talk. This is also an interactive presentation as well. We have about 45 minutes together, which includes Q&A. I want to make it interactive. Teaching virtual skills, teaching engagement skills virtually kind of forces me to have to use some of these skills as well. So let's go ahead and kick things off with an interactive exercise. In the chat, if you would, let me know where you're dialing in from, what part of the world, what part of the state. I've been involved in Toastmasters for a number of years. In this virtual situation, it's enabled me to visit Toastmasters groups all over the world, and I'm really enjoying that. So where are you tuning in from? They have June's coming, joining us from Buckhead. Thanks a lot. Pamela from Atlanta, Lawrenceville, Georgia, Cherish, and Tracy's in Buckhead. Amy, all the way up in Kennesaw. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and Robert from Alpharetta. I'm in Alpharetta as well. Thanks for joining me today through the engagement principles. Another thing is, well, I can't see you, so I won't be able to physically see you raise your hand, but at any time you have a question and you would, you can raise your hand through through where it lists all the panelists, or the participants rather. So go ahead at this time, look for that down at the bottom portion of where all of the participants are listed. Look for a hand where you can raise, and everybody raise their hand, put their hand up. See, Donna and Marianne and Mike have all put their hand up. Thanks a lot. So if you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand and I'll acknowledge. Go ahead and put your hand down. And if you'd like to clap, you can clap. I can't see you. Well, I guess you can't. I can't use this one as well. However, a virtual clap is something we've done in Toastmasters for some time, and that is the double queen wave. So let's look at our objectives for today. There are two things that I would like to cover. First of all, talk about the 3 foundational skills that all presenters must master. We'll get into that, and we'll take a look at some of the principles of engagement. There are a total of 8 principles of engagement, and we'll get into some of those because we just don't have a lot of time to get into all 8 of them. But I want to also give credit where credit is due. All of the images that you see are from this website called Pexels. They're free. In case we have any trademark lawyers in the group, I just want to make sure that you know that these are free images. You can use them however you want to. You don't have to acknowledge Pexel or the person who took the photograph. However, it is nice if you do. So this is my acknowledgement to their website. So we're talking about engagement, engaging your audience virtually. As I said at the opening, many of the principles that you used while you were presenting on stage, those same techniques that you used on the stage to engage your audience, all of those things can be used in the virtual world. But we've got to kick everything up a notch or two. But before we go into dissecting how to engage your audience, what I'd like to know is your definition of engagement. Again, we'll go back to the chat. How would you define audience engagement? What types of things have you used in the past to engage your audience? So we're all on the same page. What kind of things do you think about when you think about engaging your audience? In this case, we'll talk about virtually. So how would you say that you would define engagement, engaging your audience? Amy, interactive discussions, excellent. Tanya, they add comments, okay, using the chat like we're doing right now. Eye contact, excellent. Active listening with Mike, excellent. Q&A, you get the prize. Dialogue versus monologue from Donna and Pamela saying that questions. All of those are great examples of how to engage your audience. Here's a list that we talked about most of these. You're using the chat, engaging your audience through chat, using polls if they're available, the breakout rooms. Now, yes, the breakout rooms. However, what I would say about the breakout room is that before you put people in breakout rooms, there are clear instructions on what's expected. I know I've had it happen to me where I've been placed into a breakout room without clear instructions. Well, what are we doing here? Who's in charge? What question are we answering? What are we supposed to do? And we start trading recipes or talking about cars or something like that, and it's not productive. So breakout rooms, a great way to engage. What I would recommend is clear instructions before you put the folks into those breakout rooms, something that I've seen Donna Lang do, coach extraordinaire. She'll ask folks she'll put the instructions on a PowerPoint, have that projected on the screen, and ask folks to take a picture of it. So when they go into the breakout room, now they have that on their camera and they know what the instructions are. Because when you put the folks in breakout rooms, you're going to lose the PowerPoint. They won't see the PowerPoint any longer and lose the chat with the facilitator. So some of those ways to engage that you talked about: chat, using the poll, using the breakout room. The whiteboard is great to use. The whiteboard feature, you'll find that when you go to the share button. When you click on the share, not only will it allow you to share the applications and the screens that you have, but in there you'll also find a whiteboard. Functions just like a whiteboard in a classroom. You can write on it. Everybody can type. They can put little annotations on it. We can put check marks next to things that we agree with, X's next to things that we don't agree with if we're trying to problem solve something as a team. And the nice thing about the whiteboard, you can save it as well. So another a great way to engage your audience. And then audience participation. Pamela said this. I think there was someone else. Amy also said interactive discussions as well. So those are all some great ways of engaging the audience. There's one additional way, and this is a big part of what I teach and what I coach, is to engage your audience by getting into their head, by delivering the material in a way that this gentleman here, I'm describing flowers, and I'm describing it in such a way, in such an emotional way, that now the gentleman is seeing those flowers in his head, is envisioning those flowers just floating from his hair. And the young lady using her imagination, me as a presenter, of taking them through a journey of talking about space or whatever it happens to be. So that they are enlightened by the emotional content that I'm delivering. So again, the other piece is getting into your audience's head, and we'll talk about some ways that you can do that in just a moment. So let's go to the hand raising. I've got a question here, and then the question is, what's the purpose of all of this? This is a lot of work, having to engage people, coming up with questions, coming up with slides, coming up with different things that I've got to do, the chat, the hands. Oh my goodness. Oi. Yeah, it's what's the purpose? So raise your hand if you'd like to answer the question about why do we need engagement? What benefit does it have to us as presenters, as salespeople? And I should also say that these principles that we're talking about not only can be used by presenters, trainers, speakers, but can be used in any situations. Mom at the PTA giving an introduction at the church, or talking about the schedule at church, or whatever it happens to be. Anybody can use these principles. So I see Robert is with us. He raised his hand. Robert, what do you think the purpose of having engagement is? What's the benefit of it?
Main thing is you want to build trust. You build trust so that the person you're speaking to will depend on you, if you will, or will eventually use you as a resource and a go-to person.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Trust. You know, that's a really good point. Thank you, Robert, about the trust. I was having this discussion with a salesperson a few days ago, that the same presentation that she was using with me virtually was the same sales presentation she used when we were if we were in a room together. And she was taking that same type of approach, just a data dump. And there's so many variables. And we're going to talk about some of those in a little bit about how to develop that trust. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Anyone else want to talk about what they feel is their definition of, or the purpose of going through all this work to have engagement? Okay, Pamela sent something through the chat, which is great. Pamela says, keeps people involved. Donna says, learned many great tools and approaches from Santa over the years. Thank you. Does a great job, Breakout Rooms. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so again, what Robert says, it's certainly having trust, credibility for the engagement. Also, the more emotionally connected that I can get with the audience, the longer that they will be able to not only remember the content, hopefully remember me, remember what value I brought into their lives, and hopefully maybe give me a call and use my services. So all great responses. So how do we develop that muscle of engaging? How do we create the engagement? Well, first, we need to develop our speaker's foundation and develop and understand the foundational skills. What we're going to go through in a little bit is understanding some of those foundational skills. We're going to look at 3 foundational skills, maybe not all of them, but 3 of them that definitely, I guarantee, are going to help increase the engagement. Just like this guy, the potter. Practice, practice, practice. Same as what we have to do as speakers. Create that foundation. There's many different pieces that are part of that foundation. Just like a father, 3 o'clock Christmas morning, opens up the box, finds all these pieces that need to be put together. So the child who wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning will have this bicycle or whatever the toy happens to be. Just like in speaking, there are many, many parts. It can seem frustrating at times. It can seem overwhelming at times. There are many layers to creating this speaker's foundation and understanding how to engage your audience. Just like a house has to have a strong foundation. No matter what comes at it, your speaker's foundation, it also needs to be strong. No matter what challenges you have as a speaker, you can always rely on the strength of your foundation. No matter what challenges you have or what obstacles you come across as a speaker, you'll be able to master them or be able to use that strong foundation. Needs to hold the weight of the entire structure. Now, this picture here, hopefully, this gentleman right back here. This is from October 7th, 1964. That's me. This is just before my 8th birthday. This is a car that rammed into our home. And this gentleman was coming from Codfish Bob's. This is down at the Babylon Town Docks, Babylon, Long Island, New York, at the corner of Fire Island and Sumpalms Avenue. Our house withstood the destruction from that car. It withstood that impact. Just like your speaker's foundation, it also needs to withstand everything. It also needs to be strong. And so that's what we're going to work on today, is building your speaker's foundation. I've designed these 3 foundational skills from many years of evaluating others. I've had the opportunity, because of my background in training and development, also in Toastmasters, training trainers, training moms who are going to speak at the PTA, team leaders, managers, facilitators, trainers. I've evaluated all of them. I love giving evaluations, and I feel that I do a good job at evaluating others as well. So from these, I've come up with 3 things, 3 top things that I feel that all speakers must master, all leaders must master, facilitators, moms who are going to speak at the PTA must master to be proficient, not only a proficient speaker, but also increase that sticky factor. And we're going to look at each one of these individually. First, we're going to look at the use of the stage. Now, in this case, when we're talking about the use of the stage, just for a moment, I'm going to talk about the physical stage. Our presentation today is more focused on virtual. However, as I said a couple of times, everything that you used on the physical stage, you can bring to the virtual stage as well. Some of the things that I would catch on the physical stage would be not taking command of a stage, where the speaker just kind of lazily walked up on the stage, leaned on something, wasn't looking at the audience. To take command of a stage is to walk up confidently on the stage, immediately go as far forward as center as possible on that stage. Plant yourself, give your opening, memorized opening, and then from there, start working the room. And because we're talking virtual, I'm not going to go into all of those things, but that would be the first. So how do you take that? How do you translate that of taking command of the stage, and how do you move that into virtual? What ideas do you have on how you can take command of your virtual stage? Go ahead and put that into the chat. How would you feel that you can take command of your virtual stage? On a real stage, I say take command by going right up to the front, memorized your opening. But that's a physical stage. How would you take command of your stage in a virtual situation? And while I'm waiting for those responses to come in, I want to also say that one of the things on the physical stage, also the virtual stage, is body language. This is going back to what Robert was saying earlier about that credibility. Even body language as a virtual presenter, all of that says something to your audience. There's no body language. How many times have you seen someone leaning on the desk? or the camera angle? This is also part of setting that stage. The camera angles of looking up someone's nose the entire hour and a half that you're on, and that's all you see is someone talking to you like this. So Mike Skrzynecki, his response about setting the stage is bringing energy. Very good. Want to bring that energy. Make sure you have proper background, good lighting, a smile, camera ready. Amy, thank you very much. June, try to make eye contact. Yeah, I'm going to talk about eye contact in just a minute. Yeah, that's very good. A lot of credibility coming through that eye contact. Mike Skrzynecki, dress appropriately. At least from the waist up, dress appropriately. Good lighting, dress professionally. Thank you, Nerman. Thank you for that. So all of those are ways of setting that stage. Some other examples of setting the stage in the virtual environment is know your equipment. Know how to use the camera. Having a good microphone, or maybe not, definitely a good microphone, but also good microphone placement. So if it's too far away or too close, those types of things can be distractions as well. Headset mics. Headset mics are fine. Headset mics are fine. I don't like them. However, don't have the microphone right here in front of your face. Put it up here above your mouth or below your mouth to avoid all that, all the breaths and so on. So that, again, part of setting that stage. Another part of setting the stage would be something that I did up front. Do you remember something that I did up front? Exactly. That was, I set the stage up front. What are we going to do today? What are the expectations? What can you expect from me, the presenter? What do I expect from you, the participants? I think that's also another important part of knowing your stage or using your stage, is setting the stage. How are you going to conduct question and answer period? We're going to use the chat. We're going to use the hand function. I had you test by going in and looking for where that hand function is. Many of you probably already know where it is. But again, I use that as not only an engagement, but for those people that may not know where that hand raise was. If folks weren't used to using the chat, we had an opportunity to just use the chat in a very simple way of putting in where you're tuning in from. So those are, again, some other ways of setting that stage or using your stage, understanding the camera, the lighting, some of the many things that all of you are saying. And I think that the more that we have been using Zoom early on in the process, back in March and April, I think people were a little more lenient when it came to bad microphones, bad cameras, cats in the background, dogs barking and all that stuff. I think we were a little more lenient, but now we're expecting a lot more professionalism from our presenters. So June brought something up just a moment ago about the eyes, and I want to talk about that. Let me give you this visual here. All right. Yes, I believe that credibility definitely comes from the eyes. As a coach coaching someone on a physical stage, we would talk about the eyes. That the eyes were the window to the soul. That you can. A lot of emotion comes from the eyes. The credibility comes from the eyes. And if we were on a stage right now, I would be looking at my entire audience. I would be addressing the audience. I would be looking around. At times, you and I may have eye contact once in a blue moon, but all of that was appropriate because I had good body language and so on, and I was doing well of scanning the room, and that's okay. But in the virtual environment, if I'm looking over here the entire time, and I'm never looking into the camera the entire time, or if the camera's here and I'm looking up here the entire time, reading my presentation, that says something to my audience. So when it comes to the eyes, and I think this can also be part of the setting the stage up front, that yes, I recognize that eyes are important. I'm going to work hard at always acknowledging you and looking into the camera. But at times I'm going to need to look around. I'm like an air traffic controller here, looking at different things. I got to click certain buttons. I've got to scroll through things, or I might lose something. So it's okay to say that up front. Or if it comes up during the presentation, something goes haywire, then acknowledge it. Say, okay, hold on a second, pause, and just get back on track. So the eyes, important. However, acknowledging that at times that I'm going to have to look away. So keep that in mind when it comes to the eyes. So we talked about that there were three pieces of three foundational skills that all presenters need to master. And these foundational skills come from years of me giving evaluations. And these are the top three that always come up. The first is the use of the stage. Use the stage properly. Body language, the voice, the camera angles, the background, all of that stuff needs to be part of using the stage. The second is the pause. The power of the pause. On the stage, this was a biggie. And on the stage, we have the luxury of being able to feel our audience, see our audience, and many speakers were still not pausing. The presenter said something funny. The whole audience erupts in laughter, but the speaker keeps talking. Give us some time to enjoy that joke. Give you, the speaker, take some time to absorb that. They're laughing. They loved it. Give them some time to acknowledge what you've just accomplished there. Now, in the real world, we have that luxury. Here, I'm in my padded room. So I can see June and I can see Cherish and I can see them smile. I can't see everybody else, but that's fine. That's fine. I know you're there. You are there, aren't you? Everybody raise your hand. Put your hand up on the through the sync ratio. Oh, good. Whew. All right, they're still all there. But I don't have the luxury of feeling my audience like I would in front. So here, actively having to, or consciously having to pause at times, giving my audience an opportunity to absorb the information, the joke, whatever it happens to be. Donna, down in her office, Donna Lang, coach extraordinaire, she has in front of her "Shut Up," which is on the wall. She also has some other plaques up there as well to remind her. And I do the same thing to remind myself that I've got to pause. So pause, the power of the pause. So two things we've talked about. We've talked about the stage, of understanding your stage, and also the power of the pause. And then the third of those three is relevance. I can't tell you how many times I gave evaluations and the content was not relevant at all to the audience. When I was going to networking events, still in networking events, many times at the networking event, one person would be giving their 6-minute, 7-minute, 10-minute presentation. One of the members, maybe a couple of the members giving those presentations. Unbeknownst to them, I would be taking notes, and after the presentation, I would come up and, would you like my evaluation? And this was a biggie, the relevance. I immediately think of two individuals. One is the roofer. Opens up, doesn't take command of the stage. There's number one. Number two, at times is talking to the PowerPoint, has her back to the audience, talking to the PowerPoint. And three, everything she's talking about is all of this technical mumbo jumbo about everything I don't need to know about a roof. So my comment was that, come out with a question. Does anybody here who has a roof? And with a PowerPoint slide, does your roof look like this? Well, if your roof looks like this, then this might be happening and that might be happening. Look for these kind of things and I can help you. Versus all this technical mumbo jumbo. Making the content relevant. I believe strongly that if a speaker uses if they're not using good speaking techniques, however, the content is relevant, they're going to capture their audience's attention from the beginning. However, after a period of time, if that speaker is using poor speaking skills, ums and ahs and so on and so forth, they more than likely will lose their audience. However, if the content is relevant, if it has an impact on their audience, that they definitely have accomplished engaging their audience. So making the content relevant. Well, Dave, I can't make it relevant. It's too technical. No, that's hogwash. All content can be made relevant. June, if you don't meet your audience where they are, you won't be relevant. Thanks. Yep, good. Thank you, June, for that. So I've talked about the top 3 pieces, the top 3 competencies that all speakers need to master to be a part of their foundation. There are a number of other pieces that are a part of this foundation, which I call the ABCs, understanding your agenda, your beliefs, and core communication skills. We're not getting into that today. However, this right here is a really big chunk of understanding or building that foundation, the use of the stage, the power of the pause, and also making your content relevant. Using your hand, or put it into chat if you'd like. What's one thing you're taking away from what we've talked about, or what I've talked about with use of the stage? What's one thing that you took away from that information using the stage? Or what did you take away from the pause, the power of the pause, or relevance? Any of those 3 things. Anything you took away, any ahas. Either raise your hand and we'll get you on the big screen. Mike Skrenecki. Let's get him up on the big screen. Mike, what did you take away from what we just discussed?
Well, I had the privilege of you doing this for me a couple months ago. So just again, bringing the energy, using hands, not, body language when you're on camera, it can make a big difference. And I do like the pause. That's a challenge when you're under the gun to try to put an event on in a certain period of time. And as we all know, we have a lot of trouble getting things started on time. Mm-hmm. So still using those pauses, right? Mm-hmm. Slow down.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Mike. Got quite a few comments that have come in through the chat. Oh, go ahead, June.
I loved the way you set the stage. It was perfect. I don't do that, but I knew exactly what to expect in this hour. Mm-hmm. And that was key to me.
Okay, great. And let me talk about that for just a minute, about setting the stage. When I work with trainers, especially because they have a lot of interaction, or workshop leaders that have an enormous amount of interaction, when they come to me and they say, well, I'm facing I'm facing this problem with my audience, or I'm facing that problem with the audience. 9 times out of 10, those problems can be solved by setting the stage properly, setting the expectations. When are we taking breaks? What are the objectives that we're going to cover today of small group activities? Again, what's going to be kind of painting that agenda with words of how we're going to work our way through this entire day. Many of the problems that the trainers were facing could be fixed by just setting that stage up front. Thank you for that. Pamela, walking close to your audience, your voice makes a difference too. I guess what you're getting at with using the stage, like walking close to the audience, using that voice, using vocal variety. I think that's what, Pamela, that's what you're saying? Yep. Yep, I agree, Rachel. Yep. Yes, good, thank you. I meant the virtual stage. It's Rachel says, it's so simple, but knowing your equipment is so important. I know that Zoom offers a number of free online trainings. They have live trainings. They used to have in the past, they had live trainings, but they have a lot of recorded trainings on how to use the breakout room, how to use the whiteboard, how to share your screen, and so on. So there's plenty of free training on Zoom. The roofer example, Amy liked the roofer example with questions. Many times I'll tell speakers to open up with a question. And one of the reasons why I recommend a question, and not that it has to happen every time, but I'm recommending it for a couple of reasons. One is you can gauge your audience. How many people here have a roof? And nobody raises their hand. Well, I'm in the wrong audience. So, how many people have faced this thing, or how many people have had this challenge or that challenge? How many people here are looking to be a millionaire? So you can kind of gauge your audience of where they happen to be right now on your topic. The other is it helps with nervousness. So now when you come out on the stage, it gives you a couple of, here again, we're talking about the physical stage, but you can use the same in the virtual as well. But now I have a few moments of standing here without saying anything, getting comfortable because people are answering my question. They're raising their hand. So you can also take it one step further. So for example, June, I say, how many people here are in the banking business? And June raises her hand and say, well, June, tell me a little bit about the banking business. So again, I'm finding a little more time. It's relevant. She's in the banking business. We're going to talk about banking. So it's relevant, and it's giving me a little more time to settle down. So questions good up front, engages your audience. That's another benefit right there. It also, it gauges the audience, it gauges the audience and engages the audience, as well as gives me some time, or you some time, to kind of settle down in front of the audience. Love how you bounce back and forth from your presentation without losing facial contact with us. Thank you, Mike. And so some good comments of coming in about things that you've taken away from those 3 foundational skills. I believe that mastering these 3, mastering the stage, mastering the pause, and mastering and writing your curriculum in a way, or writing your speech in a way, or your presentation in a way that's relevant to your audience. One other thing I'll talk about when it comes to writing. My background is also in instructional design, designing instructional material, designing e-learning. And I work with a lot of subject matter experts who, these are folks that they're the expert in their field. And I need to dissect all of that information from them to create a training course. The first question I ask is, what's the conclusion? What are the 3 things? What are 3 things that if after attending this workshop, they forget everything else, but your audience remembers these 3 things, what are they? And now that not only becomes their conclusion, it also becomes their objectives, their opening. And now we work backwards where we start building that. So if you want them to know these 3 things, what is the one thing that's going to help them learn item number 1. What's the second thing that's going to help them learn item number 2? Or the second thing that, again, to learn item, and then start breaking it down. So I don't want to make this complicated. What are the 3 things that they need to learn? And then you start breaking it out, where you take topic number 1 and you start creating an outline under that. What are 3 things that help accomplish that one objective, and so on. So I think, just like any subject matter expert, I sometimes talk myself down little alleys that may or may not be relevant. So, all right. So we talked about those 3 things, the foundational skills. The next is looking at that there are a number of pieces. There are a number of things that make up your speaker's foundation. The 3 we just talked about are one of those, 3 of those foundational skills. There are many other pieces, just like building that foundation. One of the additional pieces one piece that you can start putting on top of that strong foundation is what we're going to look at next, and that is the adult learning theory. We're just going to look at a handful of these, only 3 of these. This comes from my years of training trainers to train. The more that I train trainers to train and use these principles, the more I was seeing that anybody can use these principles to engage their audience. The objective of these principles are to engage and to make your message stick. And this is engaging them in their head. This is engaging them in their head. So let's look at one of them. The first one is primacy and recency. When you think of the words primacy and recency, and you can also see the definition there on the screen, we're talking about firsts and lasts. So in a speaking situation, or in a sales presentation, or a training situation, your first is your opening, setting that stage up front. Now, along with that, it needs to also have impact. It needs to engage your audience where somehow they were impacted by the opening of your presentation, that it's going to become now memorable. As humans, we remember impactful firsts and impactful lasts. And for me, an impactful first is my first day in basic training at the United States Air Force, August 18th, 1976. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'll never forget it. It was an impactful day. It was a change of life, a change of everything. So impactful firsts, remembering that in your presentation at the beginning. Also impactful lasts, that we remember the last movie that you saw at a physical movie theater, the last impactful kiss, or the last car that you had, or the last great bottle of wine that you had. So impactful lasts. In this case would be an action statement, or an impactful action statement of some sort. Something that's going to get the listener or the participant or this prospect to take a next step. Now, there are ways that you can sprinkle in these firsts and lasts throughout your presentation using transitions. We've just, in some ways, I hope that I demonstrated that we talked about those 3 foundational skills. We talked about the value of those 3 foundational skills. I had you answer questions about those first 3 foundational skills. I had you think about some things about those 3 first foundational skills, and then introduce the next. So that's another example of how you can incorporate that. Now, if it's appropriate, it all depends on your presentation. All of these things are designed that you can use them appropriately in your presentation. If you're telling a story from beginning to end, you may not have a review. Maybe there's a review. You may not have a review, but you keep in mind that you still have to set the stage up front. You still have to have an impactful opening and impactful closure as well. So firsts and lasts. This is the first of the 8 principles of adult learning. Let me also briefly describe this graph, which I neglected to do. On the outside of the graph, all humans are looking for these in a training situation. not only in a training situation, if they're participating in a training situation, but in any engagement, they're looking for an impactful opening, no matter what you're doing. If you're a sales guy, you must have some sort of an impactful opening to engage your audience. You also need to have an impactful closure so they feel confident enough with your sales presentation that they take a next step, that they have credibility, like Robert said a few minutes ago. So on the outside are what all adults are looking for. On the inside are the differences. And I don't really have the time to get into those, but on the inside are the differences. If you email me, I'll have my contact information at the end. I'll send you a handout with this graph, and also it goes into a pretty good explanation of a summary of each of these principles. So we talked about the first of these 8 principles, the primacy of recency, and also or primacy and recency. The next one to look at is the principle of complexity. Have you ever been in a swimming pool? On one end of the swimming pool, you've got the shallow end. On the other end of the swimming pool, you have the deep end. The principle of complexity is that same visual, starting off at the shallow end of the pool, starting off with easy, understandable stories, analogies, examples, starting off with the easy, transitioning then as you continue to go through the presentation, gradually making your way down to the deep end. Now, I say gradually. Now, you could go faster to the deep end. However, you have to assess whether your audience is ready to go down to the deep end, of asking questions, of gauging your audience. In some ways, I was doing that with asking folks to contribute with what did they take away? What did they learn? If I had more time and getting more involvement there, if people were using the chat when I was asking, what are you taking away? And they're all talking about something completely different than what I was teaching, then that's an indication we're not ready yet to move on to the deep end. I need to spend a little more time here at the shallow end or the medium end of the pool. So, principle of complexity, visualize the swimming pool. Start at the shallow end of the pool. Gradually go into your content. Gradually introduce the material, and then making it more complicated. We as subject matter experts, I'm guilty of this as well as many other subject matter experts. We think everybody learns exactly the same way as us. We also have all of this knowledge in our head. We've been married to this information for years. So it's so easy to start throwing out acronyms and complicated stories and so on, and sometimes forgetting about putting ourselves in the shoes of the person that's on the other side of the camera. So, principle of complexity. So the last of these principles that we'll take a look at is the principle of repetition, and I hope that throughout this demonstration today that I've been able to demonstrate that by reviewing what we've talked about, reviewing the primacy and recency, did a review of principle of complexity, and demonstrated that principle of repetition. Because all of this, these principles of engagement or principles of adult learning is all about creating engagement, getting into their head, keeping that content relevant in their head. We had 2 objectives today. Was to introduce you to those 3 foundational skills that all presenters must master. And these are skills that came from my years of evaluating others, and I continue to evaluate others. And these are the top three that always come up. And we talked about some of the principles of engagement. So I'm going to open it up at this point for any questions that you have. Okay, I see Donna has asked a question. Everybody coming up now? Now I can see everybody, or starting, I can see their names at least. So if you would, if you'd like, go ahead and put your camera on, because now I can see you. Or do they need permission to turn their camera on? Talking is permitted. Okay, all right, that's fine at this point. We'll do that. Donna, I see you have your microphone off. What would you like to say?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. It's always great hearing and learning from you, hearing what you're up to. I love how you mentioned the names of the participants related to the comments that they've made. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
About using the, when I acknowledge the comment and I say the person's name, for example, Mike says, love how you bounce back and forth. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I love that. I thought that was
Okay.
great.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you brought that up. You know, there's many different ways of acknowledging your audience or engaging your audience. Saying the person's name, of acknowledging their question, thanking the participant for their question. In this case, what I've also demonstrated with Donna is I repeated the question, making sure that I understood the question, and that type of engagement with it. You know, not only making sure that I understand the question, but also showing that they definitely have value with asking that question. So that's why I do that, either in the physical, on the physical stage, or here in the virtual world, acknowledging your audience, thanking them for participating. Thank you. Mike, are you able to share with us how you've incorporated your presentation without simply sharing your screen and running through a PowerPoint? Yes. I use a product called Prezi, P-R-E-Z, as in zebra, Prezi. Prezi has been around for a number of years. However, this is something new for them, and it all originated from a PowerPoint that you import. So it's using Prezi. When was your last impactful kiss? That comes from Donna Lang. That was about an hour and a half ago with my wife, Donna Lang. More examples. Let's see. Some other questions. When was the last impactful kiss? Haha, got that. Another example. How do you take technical presentations? Okay, we just went through that. Okay. Is anyone else raising their hand? Mike has his hand raised. Did you want to? Did you have a question? Or Robert? I see a couple of microphones.
And I think Rachel had a question as well too. It's in the chat box.
Rachel.
It's Rachel Donnelly.
Do you have any additional tips on virtually engaging seniors or those who are less technically savvy, or do all these tips apply? That's a great question. So the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about a group of people that may not be technically savvy would be to, I would have a PowerPoint with some images to show them what, if I want them to click on a button, what is that button going to look like? Very using verbally painting a picture with words on how to use the mouse. Maybe even a short video of some sort, if it's appropriate, to demonstrate how to accomplish a task. Those are the first things that come to mind. Definitely slow, using pauses, making sure that everybody is with us. I know that I've seen it with software trainers who are virtually training, and they're just click this, click, 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 click. Holy crap! I don't even know where we're at right now. So slowing the pace, having examples, creating a video, a PowerPoint. So those would be my initial thoughts around working with seniors and engaging them. Does that help, Rachel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Robert, I see your microphone is off. Did you have a question?
No, I just got the instruction to unmute my microphone, so I did. That way, if I get emotional on something, I can just jump in.
There you go. Great. See, there it is. So I've emotionally connected with Robert to the point where he followed those directions to a T and unmuted his microphone. Thank you. Donna, more examples. How do you take technical content and make it relevant? Again, a great question. It's there are many answers to this question. So, you know, I gave the example earlier with the roofer and with going into all of that technical mumbo jumbo so in your case, you're a coach. Okay, I'll use you as the example that you're a coach. So instead of that coach talking about all the technical processes, the technical terms, the technical of ways of accomplishing things going through a coaching process, it's more about in the beginning of finding having that emotional connection of finding those pain points up front. I hope I'm answering. I mean, that's a great question. Put me on the spot. I got 6 minutes left, and I got to come up with an answer. But you know, I think in every situation you can take what you do. I'll use another example of an architect. This was an architect at another networking event who was an architect building huge buildings. He didn't do anything with homes, didn't do anything with individual homes. It was all about huge office buildings. And now he's speaking to us in a networking group, and it goes straight into talking about office buildings. Maybe one person in the audience could relate to that. So in that situation, what I would recommend is, what are some things about that you consider when you start building an office building, that someone who is looking to do some modifications around their home might need to answer some similar questions to that. So when you're getting ready to build a huge structure, what are some of those initial questions? Are any of those questions similar to what I need to think about when I want to build a back deck, or what that I want to create a room or update my bathroom or something like that? So that would be some of the things that I would look at. Does that answer your question, Donna? I hope so.
I hope you can hear me. Oh, good, you can hear me.
Yes.
Well, a couple of things that I've learned from you over the years that I've also incorporated is an example of really simplifying the beginning. So a really good example is last year someone called me up and said, I heard about you. I've interviewed other coaches, and they're going on and on and on. And I said, why don't we just go ahead and look at 2 questions to see if there's room and a need for us to talk further. The first question is, what are your objectives? And the second question is, why are you looking for a coach now? And the next day she hired me, because all the other coaches gave her a core dump. This is what we're doing, and this is what it's going to cost you, and this is blah, 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 blah. And she was just overloaded. But I made it all about her, and that's something I've learned from you, David.
Great. Well, thank you, Donna.
Does that clarify what you were getting at before?
Yes. So I hope some portion of my rambling just a few minutes ago had some value in there.
Very valuable.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're just about out of time. I want to put up one last slide. If you would like to talk, if you'd like to get together with me to discuss a training course that you're currently training and would like some feedback on it, how to incorporate some additional engagement, not changing the training course, but how to add additional engagement into that course, give me a call. If you're designing a workshop, you've been a proficient speaker from the stage for years, and now you want to conduct a workshop, either physically or virtually, give me a call, help you with games, activities, objectives, and so on. If you have a video of something you've done in the past and you'd like some feedback on that, I can help you there as well. If you're getting ready to write a speech and don't know where to start, or if you want to discuss e-learning. A lot of folks now are, because they have more time at home, things are going more virtual. People are thinking more about creating training or self-paced training, e-learning as well. From my instructional design, I design e-learning, I do voiceover for e-learning, so I can help you with that as well. So in the chat, I am adding my link to my LinkedIn profile, and please feel free to reach out. And let me throw things back to June.
Well, David, now I'm nervous about having an impactful last. So
I do want to say something, and I do want to add to it after you, June.
no, I just wanted to say, David, this was an excellent and very useful presentation. And thank you so much for being here today. And I wanted to thank all of our guests for being here today. And I really want to encourage you to reach out to David, because there is so much more. This is just like the surface, and I learn every time. So go ahead, Cherish.
No, just on that note, I've worked with David on one presentation, and he gave me practical strategies and feedback. And so that was very helpful to me. So if you are thinking about a big presentation that is coming up and that you're planning for, or a big launch that you want to do, he does work one-on-one with you to get to the goals that you want to achieve. And so your strategies were practical, very effective, and I could use them for more than one presentation. So thank you very much. And thank you for, speaking here today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.